You're listening to another ambitious Entrepreneur Network.com podcast, the voice for entrepreneurs and small business. Now, onto the show.
You're listening to the award-winning podcast, The Ambitious Entrepreneur Show, featuring business leaders to help you navigate a constantly changing marketplace. Want to become known as a trusted authority while building a thriving business you love? The Ambitious Entrepreneur Show will show you how. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Cross.
And welcome to another episode of the Ambitious Entrepreneur Show, brought to you by the Influence Alliance for change makers who are looking to build a scalable and sustainable business they love. And yes, I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross. Now, my guest today says food for me has always been about sharing. I think what's happening and what worries me is we're so focused on convenience because we're time poor that we're losing some of the essence of what food really is. So join me on today's show is Lorraine Gnanadickam, and she is the founder and CEO of Food Street. She's going to be sharing what Food Street is. She's a mum of two beautiful children, and she is a passionate foodie. Now, this is Lorraine's very first business, and even though it is, she's been very entrepreneurial. Now, with 15 plus years in medical devices and pharmaceutical, Lorraine had the opportunity to hone her skills before creating Food Street, and it's been the wildest ride of her life and her working life. I'm sure we're going to hear more about that. Now, specifically on today's show, she's going to share how to start up a business from scratch while also working and raising a family, how to find the right investors for your business, and tips on receiving funding, and how to create a for-profit business that is also for good. So welcome to the show, Lorraine.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thanks for having me on today.
You are so welcome. So share a little bit more. Food Street. What is Food Street?
So Food Street is a service that connects people who are passionate about food and love cooking with time-poor people in our communities. So we enable and empower home cooks to cook what they love, their traditional family recipes, what they're cooking for their own families. We enable them to do that and earn some income cooking from home whilst making the vast selection of beautiful meals that these people are cooking available to the wider public. So we're an online website. So basically, as a customer, you could go to our website and you could choose from over 100 meals from close to 30 cooks at the moment that are all cooked in small batches and by hand into traditional recipes, and then fresh frozen, and we deliver direct to the customer.
That is amazing. So tell me, how did you come up with that idea?
So it was actually through sheer frustration. So I started my working life as a chef straight out of school. And although I didn't continue on with being a chef, I was always someone who loved to cook and always had people over at our house cooking up big batches of food because I love to share my food. And I also come from a very multicultural background. So food, as you mentioned in your beautiful intro, food to me has always been the centerpiece of any kind of gathering. It's an opportunity to share stories and cultural backgrounds, and it's about nourishing and bringing people together. And as I journeyed on in my life through my jobs in corporate and medical devices and pharmaceuticals, I came to a point in my life when I had two beautiful young children, and I was finding it really, really difficult to come home and do justice to my job, but also do justice to putting nutritious and beautiful food on the table for my family. And what I found myself doing was buying supermarket meals and buying takeaway meals, which are not very healthy and not something you want to be eating 3 times a week. So it was through utter frustration one night, sitting around the dinner table and talking to my husband and wondering how other people were managing. And the conversation basically led us to thinking about people we knew on our street. There was a lady that lived across the road that was cooking beautiful Mexican food, and we'd always get filled with this beautiful smell of Mexican food wafting in the windows while I was ordering my pizza. And we talked about people like her that we knew that could potentially maybe, we could buy some food from her. And then we talked about other people that we knew that were in our situation, which was struggling to put a good meal on the table. And the idea came up around, what if we connected people on our street? What if we all helped each other? We could help the people that love cooking and want to earn a bit of extra income, and we could help people like us come up with healthier ways to do dinner time and reduce a lot of that mum guilt, which is something that I was feeling at the time. And that started our obsession with Food Street.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously that beautifully segues into how to start a startup from scratch whilst you, as you said, you were working and also raising a family. So it started off with an idea, and I know you're going to walk us through some of the things that you did, and hindsight is a wonderful tool, a teacher, and so I'm sure you'll give us the things that you did that worked really well. But I wonder, from the time that you spoke with your husband, you identified a need, you started doing some brainstorming. Often what happens at that stage is we go away and we don't really think about it until the same problem continues to resurface. So I wonder for you, what was the time frame between having that wonderful conversation and then actually starting to take action to get this idea and the ball rolling, which is now, of course, as we know, Food Street. So how long between that time frame?
Well, I think for me personally, it became an all-consuming obsession, which is, I had always wanted to run my own business. I never really had an idea that I felt as passionate about as this particular idea. And I remember my husband saying to me, I think you're getting a bit too excited. We haven't even, how are we going to get funding and how are we going to do this? And I just had this inner belief that somehow I'd make it work. So I guess from the time that we had that conversation, I probably started the next day, the first step. And then it was a period of months of trying to understand what we needed to do to get that business up and running. So there was all the beginning things like, business name, trying to understand if we went down the path of understanding if we needed to patent the idea, which we ended up realising you couldn't, but, consulting with those lawyers. And then the first biggest thing we did was we reached out and got in touch with some food lawyers because for us, like thinking of this as a concept, I remember us talking about it, we didn't want to do any harm. We wanted to make people's lives better, and we didn't want to be negligent in the way that we went about our business. So that was our first big investment, was hiring some lawyers to help us understand the business case and what the risks were and how we could do that in a safe and sustainable way.
Yeah.
And then
I was going to say, so it's really important that and so when you were going through that process, knowing that you even needed a lawyer, was that something that came to you, or had you already spoken to people who'd said, look, with your business the way it is and the business model you're wanting to create, you really do need to speak to these experts to support you? Was that something that you found through the research?
No, I think what happened was I had tried to sell food from home previously, being a foodie and a cook, and I knew that I had called the council a number of times and they made it out as if it was absolutely impossible for us to do that. So I kind of knew from a cook's side what that looked like. And then I ended up looking up legislation and trying to get my head around the legislation. But there's actually two parts of the legislation that affects this business. And it just seemed to be something that was not something I could do. So I researched and said, did a search around who were the thought leaders in food industry. And what we were trying to do had never been done before. So there was no precedent for it. So we thought the best way forward would be to engage some professional advice.
Perfect. What I love about what you've done, and then I'll let you share the steps again, is someone, the organisation, the council went, no, you can't do that. It's impossible. And then you've gone, well, actually, I'm not just going to do that in my local council. I'm sure you're now, statewide and probably even nationwide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the step was you spoke and you hired, invested in some professional expert advice. Yep.
Yep. Yes. And then once we got that expert advice back, it gave us, the risks and the parts that we couldn't do. And we were still in the formation part of our business around how do we actually build, what does the model look like? How would it actually work? And they were able to, I guess, highlight what we could and could not do as a hard barrier for us to then build our business to fit within those walls. And what I did was I just made sure that I involved the regulators every step of the way, and I had regular meetings, because I think a lot of the bigger companies, the Ubers of the world, had this kind of approach where they built such a big business and didn't really engage the regulators and got into a lot of trouble along the way. But with my medical background and having had worked with regulators in the past, I thought it was really important and a really key, I guess, ethic of our business to work with regulators and do things the right way. So there was a lot of people that said you'll never be able to do it. There is no way. But we did it, and it was just through absolute relationship building and a lot of investment of time and energy into setting it up the right way.
Yeah, setting up a business the right way, I think, is so crucial, because and involving key stakeholders, which in this instance is very much the regulators. I would imagine if you look back at the discussions you would have had with them, there are probably insights that determined decisions that you've made and the process by which you followed that was on the back of some of the things that these regulators brought up, yes?
Absolutely. And we ended up building our business around their advice and around what we then has formed part of our IP around the conversations and the understanding of why things are allowed and why things are not allowed, and how to actually build that business. So, and we still talk to them, and I do have private advisors now that are very well respected in that space that provide advice to our business. It's very important.
Oh, it is. And I'd imagine too that because you've got other cooks, other chefs involved, home chefs, there's protocols that they need to be mindful of, and those rules just need to be followed. And so when you're onboarding that, so the advice that you would have got by making that decision, we are not only going to be mindful of the regulations, we're going to involve them and welcome them into the discussions. It's buy-in, isn't it? All the way through. So it's asking them to contribute to that conversation. So when you got that, then you've got your idea, you've got your, the things that you need to do. What was the next stage, or the major big stage in building this and actually launching?
Yeah, so the next stage was we came up with a business model of how we would go forward, and it is very different to what it is today. But the business model early on was a hot food model, so it would literally be in a small area. You'd have people cooking in their homes, and you could pre-order the day before and then go to that person's house and pick up the food. So literally thinking about that street concept, that was how we that's how we launched the product. And we ended up choosing Sydney's highest density suburb, which was Zetland. And we planned, first of all, we had to build the website. So we had some partners that helped us with building that first website and all of our processes and back ends as an e-commerce business. And then we launched it was 12 months after we had the business idea. We launched the concept as like a test case in Zetland. And we first of all, we did a cook's call out. So we actually went out and invited people to come in and cook. And then once we had the cooks established, it was a matter of driving the demand side of our platform.
Amazing. Yeah. And so when you have a look back then, would there be anything that you would have done differently? Because I think, again, insight is a wonderful teacher.
Yeah. Probably we made the mistake that a lot of startups make. So the mistake we made was we thought we knew exactly how it was going to work, and we paid some money into building a custom, it wasn't an app, but it was a custom platform to enable us to run that concept and that model. If in like you said, hindsight's a great thing, but we ended up getting rid of that 6 months later and wasted quite a bit of money doing that. So I think that was something everybody said to us, don't build anything until you know exactly what you're building. But we thought, no, we know what we're building. So, and we ended up wasting that money. So I think if there was one thing we did differently, it would have been not going ahead and investing into building a technology yet.
Yeah. And so would I be right to assume then that the change that you made, one of the major changes was not being a hot food, but rather, because you mentioned a frozen food. So was that one of the changes you made, or did that come later?
That came later. So that's the last 2 years now that we made that change. But I do think I'm a big believer in I don't regret much about what I do in my life, because I think everything has a learning value. And I think, if we hadn't pursued the hot food concept, because it's something that's been tried by many, many people before, if we hadn't tested that, then we wouldn't have ended up where we are today with such confidence, knowing the pitfalls of that particular model.
Yeah. What I love about what you're sharing there, and I mean, it's very entrepreneurial, isn't it? We take risks, and there's informed risks, and then there's risks that we can say, well, now we're better informed through having done that. So overall, I mean, you said just in the last 2 years, I think if I recall correctly, you've changed that more to now a frozen model. But from when you started, because I'm not sure whether we actually mentioned, from that idea, you did that for 12 months. And then, so how long has the business actually been running?
So 2015, we came that night, sitting at the dinner table was August 2015, and we ended up launching in Zetland, I think it was October 2016. So just over a year it took to get everything lined up.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So this beautifully segues into the second point about how to find the right investor for your business and tips on receiving funding, because obviously there's a lot of steps, ins and outs that you did, but throughout that time, I mean, you invested in professional expertise in the the area of legalities. Was that something that you funded out of your own pocket and then got funding? Tell us the journey of the funding that you received.
Sure. Yeah, look, we fortunately had some years behind us in working full-time, my husband and I. So we did fund quite a bit of our business early on, and we very naively, and that's something that is a learning in my life. I just thought, we can do it in a year. Like we'll be able to we'll build it up and we'll get funding in a year and it'll be completely fine. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen for us that way. So it took us a lot longer to get funding. But we were lucky that we were able to fund it ourselves for quite a bit of time. And we did put quite a bit into our own business, or what they call skin in the game, I guess, when investors look at it. And then we got to a point where I think it was, I'm just trying to think, it was over 2 years ago now, just on 2 years ago now, that we went for a crowdfunding campaign, and it was just before the legislation changed on crowdfunding. And basically we went to go through with the crowdfunding, and we had all this money pledged to us, which was very exciting. But when we started looking through the details around what was needed, we would have to have become a publicly unlisted company, and the ramifications of that we did not think was a good thing. And they were about to change the legislation, and they ended up changing it 3 months later. So we paused on the crowdfunding campaign, and prior to that, I started looking for funding from the very beginning. And for me, looking for funding is all about networking, understanding the landscape as far as, who are the investors, where would we find these investors. And I think I would have pitched my business at over 100 times, which means I would have gotten over 100 rejections on that. And you're constantly trying to go, okay, well, I didn't get this funding this time. Why is that? How do I adjust my business to show that and demonstrate that for the next time I go for funding? But then out of that crowdfunding campaign, we did get a fantastic angel investor who just loved the vision and the purpose of what we were trying to achieve. And she put in some money for us. And then basically we kept looking for funding, and we just kept trying to prove out the model. And it was just recently that we closed a fantastic investor, David Hancock, who is the former founder of Afterpay. And he's joined us, which is hugely exciting to have him on board and to have his wealth of knowledge and information being put into our business. So we're now at that stage where we're scaling and we're ready to go. And it's been a labour of love.
Yes. I mean, when you're thinking about the different growth stages of your business, if you look back to some of the pitches that you did to find that right investor, I mean, obviously now you've got a wonderful investor, which is great. But what are some of the insights for those people who are maybe in the process of preparing information to pitch to investors? What are some of the, do not do this because this is what I did, but here are some of the key things that we got feedback that was really positive, so do this.
Yeah, look, that could be a whole other half hour on these things. But I really think it's about it is like finding a needle in a haystack. So for us, and I learned over the years that our business is, because it's so different, we were looking for a certain type of investor. So I guess if I had to go back, if someone had said to me, profile your, and people did say that, profile your investor, but I had no idea what that meant. But there's different types of investors and different types of investors that look for different things, that invest in certain industries that, are at different stages of their investment journey. And it's just over time that I learnt that. And, finding someone like David Hancock was, there was no magic about it. I spoke to someone, that person spoke to someone else. I pitched to them, they loved it. We pitched to David, and he loved it, and he was just the right investor at the right time. But it's just perseverance, and it's a numbers game, and it's trying to find the perfect match, really.
That, I think, is an incredible insight, because if we think about business in itself and marketing, you could be sharing a marketing message, so your pitch could have all of the right points. It's just that you had to educate a lot of those people. They weren't your ideal investor. It's like, how many messages, that it's not the right message or the right audience. So change your audience. And so with the conversation then that you had with people, you also want to share around on receiving funding. So what are some of the things that need to be in place to transition that receiving in the best possible way for all parties involved?
Do you mean from the technicalities of that?
Or because are there some things that you need to have in place? Because, a lot of businesses will start up and they think, look, once we've got funding behind us, we will be fine. But I'm sure from the funders' point of view, you need to have some things in place so that the relationship can continue, because often people, I would assume that businesses think, well, once we've got money, we're fine. But actually, you still need to nurture that relationship and have the right things in place so that it's a win-win-win for everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, from a very technical perspective, you need to have a business model. But in saying that, as a startup, things move so quickly that, and I think I got caught on that as well. You do out these 5-year plans that have, changes in revenue and but the reality is that within 3 months it changes anyway. So, but what you have to do is you have to demonstrate that you have a good sound knowledge of the financial side of your business, and that you have a plan to move it towards a certain to a certain milestone, I guess.
Yes.
And that has to be aligned with what the investor wants as well. So that's the hard bit. But of course, all the legal documents need to be in place. And you need to be set up to be able to receive that funding. And then for us, I guess it just depends on the investor and how they want to operate as well. Our angel investor, she's very, very busy, so it's not something that we sit down every month and have a meeting. But some other investors are someone that talks to us, every week. So it just depends on that negotiation of how you want that investment to operate as well.
Yeah. Did you find that when you were talking to investors, that not only did they want a solid business idea, but they were actually interested also too in you? because as you know, in businesses, and I'm sure there's always risk involved, but are investors also looking at, well, if market does change, what sort of personality are you? Are you going to continue to, go up, down, left, right, and find out every single way that you can continue? They're looking for that drive and passion too, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's definitely something with both of the investors in our business that has been around, a really important thing, and I think it's important as a founder as well. Like you want to make sure that the people that are investing in your company believe in you and see the value that you can bring. Because I've had many conversations with not the right investors where they can't see the value. So it's all very subjective. So I think it's a match, someone you're going to work with who's partnering into your business. So it needs to be something where it's a win-win for both parties.
Yeah. So if you have a look at your business model now, I'd imagine that there is quite a strong tech platform. Do you have an app now that works, or it's online? Tell us about how you kind of communicate with clients. I'm quite fascinated.
Yeah, sure. Look, we don't have an app. We have it's a website, and it's something that in the plans for us to be able to build that out into a full platform. For us at the moment, we have a warehouse in the northern beaches of Sydney. We have warehouse staff. So what happens is our cooks are all vetted when they're onboarded. Each of their meals are tested, and we taste test everything, so it's up to our standards. And then we place orders on a weekly basis. It's only in very small batches. And then we pick up on a weekly basis. We go out and we pick up all the meals and bring them back to our warehouse. And then customers come in and they order across the whole website and they're able to pick whatever they like. There's no subscriptions. And then we pick and pack and send out to the customers. So our business is enabled by technology, and the future of that, there's so much we can build from a technical platform, but really a lot of it is to do with logistics and warehousing, and the food side. For us, it's the taste of the food that is just so different to anything you can find on the market.
Yeah, amazing. And I love the way that, you've stressed it's important to be able to get that right first, and then you can add, because I think as entrepreneurs, our vision could be so big. It's at different stages, isn't it? And that's right. So out of interest, I mentioned it's possible that people around Australia can then go to the website and buy meals?
Not right now, because we don't. We only deliver across New South Wales, so we deliver everywhere from Port Stephens all the way Greater Sydney down to Wollongong, Bowral, that area. But that's part of what the funding has come in for, and we're currently in planning stage to try and get the model set up and then expanded into. Our vision is to be in every community across Australia and for everybody to have food street meals in their freezer.
Oh, as you were sharing that, how many women or families would be going, absolutely, and the different cultures that you can tap into in the food. So that's exciting. So let's talk about, because obviously you're a for-profit business, but you also very much with a for good. How have you been able to blend those two things?
So I think, I was reading on your podcast information, I think if it's something, I really believe the businesses of the future need to be tapping into that for good. And our business, yes, it is for profit, but what we're doing is we're empowering and enabling, and that's our mission statement, is to empower and enable people through home cooking. So if you think about it, if you're someone who loves to cook, you're cooking multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day, and you're constantly refining your skills. So what we have here is a huge skilled labour force that are not earning money for that skill. And I think, what we've been able to achieve, and it's at the forefront of everything that we do in our business, is all about empowering people to cook from home and to be able to earn some income doing what they love. And one of the funny things is that we do a lot of videos of our cooks. They come in and cook something, and we interview them about why they cook and what they like to cook. And every single person without us prompting them, says the reason they cook is because they love seeing the smile on people's faces when they eat their food. They see it as a sign of generosity and love, and, you know, it's about giving. And I think that there is the fundamental basis. It starts with a really good intent. That food, because it's made with such care and love, tastes better and it's better for you, which then makes the customers happy to keep ordering that food. And it becomes a cycle where, you know, not only are we empowering the cooks, but we're also enabling the time poor people to eat better food. And it's, you know, bringing people together. So there's so much good in what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm sold. That's why when you reached out and said I'd love to come on the show, I thought absolutely. And what I love about this, I mean, the whole concept's wonderful, but just what is possible. I mean, how many people such as yourself sit down across the table, they share an idea, if only this, this and this, and then sadly it doesn't go anywhere. But what an opportunity that you've now done. And so you've created a business that, as you say, it ties so many people, combines, unites so many people, the cooks who love and passionate about food, other people who are passionate about food but don't necessarily like to cook, which is, I'll put my hand up for that. However, know the value of a healthy meal, and what a great opportunity for you to do that. So share a little bit more about what's the website, share that again so people can go there.
So the website is www.foodst, which is Food Street for short, .com.au, and you can simply pick and choose across all of the meals, and we have everything from Cambodian street foods to, you know, your traditional lasagnas, and we're bringing on many more cooks, particularly now with our expansion, many more cooks and many more dishes. We add two new dishes a week, so we're trying to keep it, you know, really fresh, so there's something different for everyone.
Wow. So I'm assuming that for consumers, obviously customers who like to have, you know, tasty, healthy meals, but also a call out for some cooks, some home cooks that think I'd love to contribute, that maybe go to the website and connect with you too.
Absolutely. So there is a part on our website under cooks. It's in the menu, cooks, that says apply to be a cook. And, you know, we are open to everybody. So whether you're a mum who loves cooking, and people always comment about, you know, how beautiful your cooking is, and you should try and sell your meals, this is the perfect opportunity, because we're able to provide you with all the, I guess, business setup around that. And we've got people who are chefs who, you know, are using Food Street as a creative outlet, because sometimes when you're chefing, you're not able to cook what it is that you want. So we've got everything for, you know, in between those two extremes. So it's open to everybody, and there is a process for coming on board, but it's something we walk you through personally as well.
Fantastic. Well, look, thanks so much for coming on the show, Lorraine, sharing your story and your journey. I've loved it, and I know that others that are listening and watching will as well. So all the very best, and who knows, maybe one day when you expand, we'll all have an opportunity to taste the awesome meals that I know that your chefs and your cooks are creating as part of that platform. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Anne-Marie. Totally enjoyed it.
This podcast is brought to you by theinfluencealliance.com. Want to influence real change with your message by becoming known as a trusted authority in your industry while building a sustainable and scalable business you love? Find out how by accessing our free podcast series at www.theinfluencealliance.com/podcast series. That's theinfluencealliance.com/podcast series.